Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ohio Voice webinar series on voter engagement in 2018. We're really excited to be conducting this webinar series so we can distribute to as many folks as possible some of the best practices around registering voters in 2018 and turning folks out to the polls, the do's, the don'ts, the rules, and everything in between. So we're really excited to do that. From Ohio Voice, my name is James Hayes, and I'm here with...
Hi, everybody. I'm Camille Wimbish.
And we're just going to go ahead and get into it. Today we'll be talking about voter registration. And then in subsequent webinars, we'll discuss early voting and election day voting and some of the things you need to know to make sure everybody's vote is counted. You want to take it away?
All right, so voter registration. So the eligibility of who is allowed to vote is basically if you're a U.S. citizen, you have to be an Ohio resident 30 days by election day, and you have to be 18 by election day. So those are the three basic qualifications for who can vote.
Which is really cool because in a lot of states, folks who have criminal backgrounds have lost their right to vote. In Ohio, that is not the case. If you've been convicted of a crime in the past, you can still vote. You just cannot be presently incarcerated on election day for a felony conviction, which means you can vote absentee from jail if you are not incarcerated for a felony. And you can also vote if you're on probation or parole, but you will have to re-register to vote once you get out of prison.
Yeah, I wish a lot more people knew that, because I think unfortunately some people feel like, oh, there's a strike against me. I'm afraid of committing some, voter fraud or doing something wrong. But really, we just got to spread the word. So please help us in that regard.
Yes, definitely.
So 17-year-olds can actually vote in primaries. We had litigation last year, or actually 2016, to clarify that if you are 17 years old and you will be 18 by the November 6th election, you can vote. You will be nominating a candidate for a congressional race, but you won't be actually electing any determinative issues such as, for instance, a state ballot issue 1, redistricting that's on this ballot. You're not eligible to vote on that as a 17-year-old, but you would be able to vote for candidates.
And that's really cool. So make sure all the young people in your communities are registering to vote early, both for the primary and also for the general election. It's a great way to get folks involved in the democracy from the start. And as you know, we also have a lot of college students in the state of Ohio. There's tons of campuses all over the place. And so registering college students to vote is going to be really, really important this year. And there's a lot of students who are coming to Ohio for school who grew up in other states. All they need to be eligible to vote here is they have to be a resident of Ohio for 30 days by election day. It's important for them to know that their financial aid and some of that stuff that they have gotten as out-of-state students will not be impacted if they register to vote here. And we think it's really important for college students to register to vote at their campuses. Even in-state students, a lot of times we think we'll just go back home to where our parents live and we'll vote there. But as we all know, college students are notorious for being too busy to drive home to vote, or maybe missing class on occasion. And it just makes it a lot easier if you can walk to your student union or to a polling place that's close to your residence rather than having to drive all the way home.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some cases where students have requested an absentee ballot and they were going to get it sent to their campus address. They wanted to vote from their county, their parents' home county, and then unfortunately it didn't get to them in time, and then they're not able to vote because of their registration in a different county. So it's just really great idea to register at your campus address.
That's right.
If you guys are going to be doing voter registration forms, one thing I want to point out that it's really important that you return those paper forms in time. So you have 10 days to return the registration form, and that's 10 actual days, not 10 business days, but 10 calendar days. If you're coming up close to the voter registration deadline, you need to return that form by the deadline. So you just want to pick whichever is the earlier of the two. And then if you somehow forget to turn in a form, I just want to emphasize how important it is to keep track of those forms, because you are subject to sort of criminal penalties for failing to return a form or for destroying a form. So, don't make a situation worse by, putting it in the trash or just not turning it in. If you do make a mistake, just, fess up, come forward, turn it in as soon as possible, but just try to make a good practice of keeping track of those forms, because it is very important.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that sounds really simple, but if you're running a large program, it can become really difficult to stay on top of returning all the forms and doing all the data entry and all the quality control. So it's important to, from the front end, set up your systems so that you can intake the forms and get them turned in and not get behind. Another thing that's really cool in Ohio is we have access to an online voter registration platform. If you go to myohiovote.com, all you need to enter is your Ohio driver's license number, your date of birth, and the last 4 digits of your social security, and you can register to vote online or update your registration online. And this is something that makes it a lot simpler for folks, just hop on the internet. It's better for the environment. And so it's a great option for people who you run into. And there's also a tool that we think is really useful that anyone can use to check their voter registration status at bit.ly/SOS lookup, and it's case sensitive there. Can you tell us why it's important for folks to be using tools like that?
Sure, and I think we can advance the next slide. Cool. So basically, it's a Secretary of State has a online voter registration lookup tool. The reason that I created this shortcut is so that you can easily find it. It's really buried on the Secretary of State's page. And so this is just an easy way to look it up. If you put in your first name, your last name, and the county, you'll be able to search anyone's voter registration that way. And I think it's really important to do it because approximately 10% of the population moves every year and they need to update their address. There's also been litigation that's currently up with the U.S. Supreme Court about voter purging, people who are being taken off the rolls if you don't vote frequently. So if you get into the habit of just checking your registration and make sure it's up to date, you can get a regular ballot and have the best chance of making sure everything goes smoothly on election day.
Totally. And when you're out in the field registering people to vote, if you ask people the question, are you registered to vote? Most people will answer yes. And it might just be because they want to end the interaction with you as quickly as possible. It might be because they think they're registered to vote. But not everybody who answers yes will actually be registered to vote. And so it's important to not just ask people, are you registered to vote? But ask people if you can help them, verify that they're registered to vote. Ask them if they need to update their registration. Because a lot of people don't know that they've been purged from their roles or that they need to update just because they moved maybe a few blocks. And so this is a great tool that Camille created for folks on the ground to be using. And this is what it looks like when you actually look up someone's registration status. We decided to see if our governor is registered to vote.
Good thing he is. That would be very embarrassing.
It would be embarrassing. And this is what will come up when you type in the name and county of the folks that you're looking up.
Yeah, and if you are talking to someone and you want to check their registration, you type in their first name, last name, county, and nothing comes up, that means that they're no longer registered or they were never registered in the first place. And so you'll want to encourage them to either use a paper form to register or to go online in myohiovote.com and do the online voter registration system. It's also possible that, just make sure that you're being really careful. Sometimes last names, you can misspell them. Sometimes people have hyphenated last names. It could just be in there a little differently in the voter registration records. So it's another good reason to double check what's on file with the Board of Elections.
Yeah. Voter purges, as Camille mentioned a little bit ago, there's actually a case in Ohio that's going all the way up to be reviewed by the U.S. Supreme Court around the voters who have been taken off of the rolls in Ohio. Right now, the Board of Elections will send voters who have not voted in the last 2 years a postcard letting them know that if they don't vote in the next couple cycles that they are eligible to be purged. And this means that it's really important that we verify that folks we're talking to are registered to vote, that we encourage people to turn out to vote in 2018 who might be eligible to be purged if they do not turn out to vote in 2018. And also that we work to end the practice of purging voters simply for not participating in past cycles, because there's no reason that they shouldn't be able to participate in future cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. We all can imagine that there are people who maybe you sit out the midterm elections, not that you should, but there are certainly a segment of population who does, who only votes every 4 years, and your voter registration could change. You could move several times. And just to make sure that you're up to date, that you're getting all the election information you need, just make sure, please encourage people to verify their registration ahead of time.
All right, so these are the voter registration deadlines for 2018, April 9th, which just passed 2 days ago. We're recording this on April 11th, for those of you watching this later. And October 9th will be the voter registration deadline for the general election. So these are exactly 30 days before the primary election in May and the general in November. And so this is the deadline by which newly registered voters need to be entered in, or people need to update their registration status.
Yeah, and I just point out that, if you are going, ooh, I missed the deadline, I didn't check it, it's too late. I will say, if you have been previously registered, it's not like you're not allowed to go ahead and vote. You still will be able to vote. You'll just need to update your registration when you vote, and you'll have to vote a provisional ballot. And we'll explain more about provisional ballots later, but I don't want anyone to feel like if you have already been registered that you're somehow shut out because you didn't update your registration in time.
Totally. Yeah, always vote, even if you have to vote provisionally. There's no reason to sit out any election. So what are some of the frequently asked questions that you might hear in the field? Do I have to register for every election?
No, that's the good news. You don't have to register every election, but it is a good idea to verify your registration, especially if you move frequently or maybe you sit out every couple elections.
Will I be called for jury duty?
You might be called for jury duty. It's only going to be a potential pool of jurors if you register to vote. The other thing is you're probably already likely going to be up for jury duty anyway, because you're in the same pool. If you have a driver's license or you pay taxes, they already have your name and info and they can still call you for jury duty. So don't let that be an impediment for you to register. That's
right. And if you aren't registered to vote, hopefully you are paying taxes at the very least. Can a student register to vote in Ohio if they have an out-of-state driver's license or if they pay out-of-state tuition?
Absolutely. Students can register in the county where they go to school, and that's totally okay. It's not going to impact your driver's license or your financial aid or anything like that.
Can a person who is homeless or does not have a permanent address still register to vote?
Yeah, so I just came from a homeless coalition conference, and they work with a lot of people who are homeless, and they were really excited to hear that you can register people who are with a shelter. You can use the address of a shelter, or you can provide a residence of someplace where that person is stays sporadically, with maybe it's a relative or friend. There are ways for homeless people to register. Don't let that stop you.
I moved or I changed my name. Do I need to re-register?
Which one is it? So you absolutely should re-register. You can go to myohiovote.com. Try to do it by the deadline. If you're unsure about your status, the best case scenario is to go ahead and just update it. There's no strike if you go ahead and submit a duplicate registration. The worst is that that you don't do anything. So by all means, if you're in doubt, go ahead and re-register.
And finally, I didn't vote in the last election. Am I still registered?
Probably. You're probably still registered, but again, you should go ahead and check your registration, because if you have not voted recently, you're likely in a category to be purged or you've been purged or about to be purged. So just double check myohiovote.com.
Who can conduct voter registration drives?
So in Ohio, we're really lucky. There aren't any real restrictions on who can do the voter registration drives, with the exception that if you do have a felony background, and you haven't completed your sentence, you can't participate in voter registration. But you can still, participate in other ways.
And can we make photocopies of our completed voter registration forms?
Yeah, a lot of groups ask us, they may feel a little weird, like they're taking some people's private information, but by all means, we recommend that people do make photocopies or scans. That way you can track registrations, make sure people are getting added to the rolls, hopefully follow up with people to encourage them to get out to vote once they've registered. But if you are feeling weird about it, you don't have to make the photocopies. But I would say that this is mostly public information.
And like Camille said, this is a great way to protect you and your organization. If a voter that you registered to vote doesn't end up making it on the rolls, if you have a photocopy of the form you turned in, then you can prove to the Board of Elections and to the voter that you did your part of the work. As well as it's so important, and Camille said this already too, I just think it's worth restating the importance of following up with people we registered to vote to engage them in actually turning out to vote. Mm-hmm. Registering is just one piece of this puzzle. We actually have to get people to turn out to vote. If a voter registration application is incomplete, can we write the missing information on the application with the consent of the applicant?
So yeah, you can do that. Sometimes people write illegibly and the person has already left, and so you could cross it out and write on top of it. You could, if there's information they didn't provide, you could call them, get their permission. The only thing you cannot do is to write someone else's signature on that form. If you're running up against a 10-day deadline to return the forms, the best thing to do is, and you can't reach that person to get the incomplete information, go ahead and submit the form anyway. Don't hold it, don't let the deadline pass. The Board of Elections will be able to do follow-up with those voters.
Are there any other things that I should not do?
I'm so glad you asked. So the one thing that we just want to guard against is offering things of value to people in exchange for voter registration. And that means you don't say, hey, if you register, you can get a free book, or you can get free pizza for people who register. And I know that may sound minimal, but the way to work around it is to say, like, hey, free pizzas, we're doing a voter registration event and there's free pizza here. Anyone can get the free pizza. It's not contingent upon you filling out the voter registration form.
Yeah. Okay, and if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us at Ohio Voice, and we'll hopefully be able to help you out. So this is what the voter registration form actually looks like. These are questions 1 through 11. This is what you will be having folks fill out when you're in the field registering people to vote. The first 2 questions are often go sort of checked, those 2 boxes. So that's one of the most important things, to just make sure you're checking them for folks. Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes. Will you be at least 18 years of age on or before the next general election? Yes. And you have last name, first name, middle initial, your address, your house number and street. Are you allowed to use a P.O. box, Camille?
So you should not use a P.O. box. It should be your actual residence. And if you do have a P.O. box, you could provide it in the number 7, the additional field. But it should be an actual residence, or some people are staying in dorms and they have that question, some students have no idea what the actual address of that dorm is. Yeah. But you need to have an actual house number and street there.
Yeah. City, zip code, your county that you live in. Box number 9 is the birth date of the person registering to vote, not today's date. And box number 10 also goes unfilled frequently. Maybe it's just because there's a lot of words in this box and it's kind of weird. But I think maybe it's also because people feel uncomfortable sharing this particular information. But all you need is either the applicant's Ohio driver's license number, and it can be a state issued ID as well, or the last 4 digits of their social security number, which is not enough information to take someone's ID if anybody is concerned about giving you that information. And box number 11 is very, very important. It's the phone number. It says voluntary. It's actually not required for folks to give you or the Board of Election their phone number. We think it's really, really important that folks do that just in case there are mistakes on the form or anything's left incomplete. It becomes much easier to follow up with people to make those corrections. It's also important for you and your organization to be following with folks to figure out, what do they need to actually turn out to vote? Do they need help making a plan to vote? Do they need a ride to the polls? Do they need some more information about ballots or the issues that they can vote on, or any of that kind of stuff? And if you don't have the phone number, it'll be much more difficult for you to follow up and help that person actually turn out to vote.
These are questions 12 and 13 on the form. It's basically if you are updating your registration, here's where you would put your previous address or your change of name. And that's just to help the Board of Elections sort of cross-reference your old record with your new record so that we can keep our records as accurate as possible. So that's where you put that information. And then box 14, some of the most important boxes. That's, again, the part that you cannot fill out for anyone else. The actual signature goes in there, as well as the today's date, the current date. So those are the simple fields.
That's right. And like Camille said, this is the box that they have to fill out everything themselves. One of the things I like to do when I'm registering folks to vote is I actually fill a lot of this information out for them. I'll ask the person, hey, what's your last name? What's your first name? And I'll actually write that in for them. I'll do that both so I can make sure everything's written legibly, but also because I find it's a little bit faster because I already know how the form works and I don't have to read over anything. I've read over it a bunch of times and I can just sort of help a lot of people much more quickly that way. But they have to fill out this part themselves, without a doubt.
So, common errors. The most common errors are citizenship or the age, the two boxes we talked about at the top, checking are you a citizen and are you 18? Again, James mentioned how people forget to put that in that little box with little space with their ID number, the last four of their social, their driver's license, and then sometimes they forget to sign and date it. Other errors to watch out for, it is county, not country. Some people write USA and they're like, yes, lovely. Some people write today's date instead of birth date. You want to make sure that you have your birth date listed there. And then again, make sure you're writing a voting address, not a PO box. And then of course, make sure it's legible. If you are looking over someone else's form and you're not quite sure what it says, you can imagine a Board of Elections who's got thousands of these possibly that they're processing. It's not going to take a whole lot of time to try to figure it out. So by all means, feel free to cross it out and write over it as you're looking over a form before you submit it to make sure that everything looks legible.
Registration confirmation. So this is really important. You can be telling folks this who you register to vote, but within 20 business days after receiving a properly completed voter registration form, your Board of Election must register you to vote and notify you of your registration status and your precinct and polling location so that you know where to vote. And this should all happen within 20 business days. So it's important to let folks know that. So if they don't get this in the mail, letting them know that they're officially registered to vote and where their polling place is, that they can follow up with the Board of Election to figure out what's going on. Is there anything you want to add about this?
No, I just, as you mentioned, that's another reason to have the, photocopies so you can see, use it as backup if needed. If the board somehow says, oh, we don't have it, here's a record of it.
That's right.
So some people wonder, hey, I filled out this voter registration form. Are you going to let me, say what party I'm with? And that is actually not part of the voter registration process. It's determined by voting in a party primary. So the party primary is coming up in May. And so that's when the poll workers will ask you, would you like a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot? If you would like neither one, many people do not wish to affiliate with party, they can vote on issues only nonpartisan ballot. And then just quickly, just wanted to mention that, if you do vote in a primary, when you select that Democratic ballot or Republican ballot, that is a public record, which ballot you choose. So some people like to cross over and say, oh, I want to be a spoiler on the other party's primary. Just let you know that, maybe your employer or who knows who else might be wanting to check on that information, and that will be part of your record. So just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, so some of the best practices of actually going out to do voter registration. And there's a lot more we can get into to talk about, how you might set up a whole plan and, integrate it into your organization's mission and all that. But if you're just looking to register some folks to vote, there's a lot of great opportunities all throughout this summer. We're about to be entering festival season, all over the state and every community. People are going to be getting together to eat and celebrate. Community and finding those events, where the fish are already in a barrel, is a great way to begin finding folks to register to vote, and just canvassing the crowd, going around to festivals and concerts and sort of finding the places where people are stationary, like lines for food or beer or bathrooms, where people will be less annoyed that you've stopped them for a moment to talk about voter registration. And you can also do tabling at these events. There's a lot of great events where you can bring a table, set it up, and also talk to a lot of folks. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, just be mindful about how you're going to go about registering folks. Make sure you have lots of clipboards. So you imagine maybe you want to register if you're in a big event and you've got a couple canvassers or a couple people who can help you out doing registrations, that they have enough clipboards so that if they're stopping to register someone, you may imagine that could take 3 or 4 minutes, that that there are other clipboards that could be circulated so that you're not missing people who don't have the time to wait. But also be mindful that you don't have too many clipboards circulating, that you can't keep tabs on who's filling what out, and you can't make sure that those forms are legible and complete. If you're passing out petitions for anything, it's a great idea to carry voter registration forms with those petitions. Think about having a sticker that once you give to someone who's registered, that will identify them as like, hey, I registered, to help draw interest and encourage people to seek other people out who will be doing the voter registration. Clipboard etiquette. That's my way of saying, like, don't be creepy. That means you don't want to be lurking over someone's shoulder and breathing all of them very heavily, because it makes people feel a little uncomfortable. The Seinfeld, like, don't be a close talker. So, give people enough space to feel like their personal space is being honored, but not too much space that you're not checking on how they're doing in completing the form. Make sure you have a rain plan. So if it's, likely that it could rain in the springtime here, it rains every 5 seconds, you just never know. Have a place, a Ziploc bag where you can put the completed registration forms so they don't get wet. Make sure that you're covered, that you aren't going to get soaked. And then of course, bring plenty of pens, because people will run off with your pen. And make sure it's blue and black ink. We should also mention that, because you may love a purple pen, but it's not good for voter registration. It will not be accepted. So make sure it's blue or black.
Yep. Only blue and black pens. It actually says it on the form. Some more best practices. You just want to be thinking about a couple things. One is visibility. You want to be very visible. You want folks to be able to know, what you're doing here. You can do that by back of your clipboard, putting a thing that says register to vote, or wearing a t-shirt that says I'm registering voters, or if you're tabling, have a really big sign up that says why you're registering, that you're registered to vote here, and maybe a little something about why it's important to register to vote. Because a lot of times people need that, like, what is the reason that's gonna get me involved in voting this year. You also want to have a sort of be able to communicate the urgency of the moment. You can do this by having a sign, maybe a whiteboard, where you have sort of X days until the deadline, or X days until the election, or where you are telling folks what's on the line this election, or why the work that your organization does around whatever issues you work on, why voting this year is going to be important for that. You want to make sure people feel the urgency. But you want it to be authentic. You don't want to just run around. We've all heard this is the most important election, every election, So you want to be able to tap into really what is going to make someone feel like it's going to be important to do this year. And you also want to be very persistent. Being in a community and building trust with folks can take time. There's a lot of organizations that people are used to seeing come in during election time, talk to folks about how great everything's going to be, and then you never see them again. And so we know your organizations are not doing that, and you're actually doing the work of talking to folks in neighborhoods and communities and building trust. But that will take time, and sometimes people will need multiple asks before they believe that you're there for the right reasons. And then you want to be thinking about, how do you outreach to the other folks in the community? Are there other organizations you can partner with? Maybe there are social service agencies, maybe there are shelters you can partner with, schools, churches. You want to be utilizing social media to get the word out, both that you're doing this, maybe to recruit volunteers to help you out, and just to show people how much fun folks are having in the field talking to folks about voting, so you can build a crowd.
Yeah, cool. Just a few more tips. Make sure that you're approaching people. That you're not, if you have a table, you're not just sitting back and waiting for people to come to you. You could be out there for hours. Be like, I don't know, because people just don't want to vote. No one came up to my table. Of course not. This is something that you're going to want to have to be, a little more aggressive in terms of, not aggressive, but assertive in terms of, going out and approaching people and be like, hey, do you have 2 minutes? Let me check your voter registration. Make sure you're using strong, specific language. Be confident, but not aggressive. Don't get in people's face. Don't, just be mindful that, you just have a few moments to make an impression on someone that will help to determine whether they want to take a few minutes to talk to you or whether they want to stay very far away from you. So just use strong language, reminding people about why it's important to vote, getting them to a place of like, yes, the election's right around the corner. This is going to take 2 seconds. Let's just do it now.
Yeah. And, I love making eye contact with people, like when they know, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to avoid this. We made eye contact. It's over.
But don't stare them down. That's not good either.
Don't stare. That's
Smile.
Yep. Smile.
Smile.
Body language is very important in this. Totally. Yeah, and as you make eye contact, yes, you want to stress the urgency. And so some of this is by introducing yourself and your organization and explaining why you're doing this. Why is this urgent to you? You don't want to just tell people what they need to do and why this is their duty and all that kind of stuff. You want to talk about why are you moved to do this? Why you could be doing anything else with your time, but you're out here registering people to vote because why is it so important to you? So hi, my name is James and I'm a volunteer with Ohio Voice, and we're registering voters today to make sure our community has a voice. It's a little too on the nose since Ohio Voice. But you just want to tailor it to whatever issue you're working around. And in crowds, it's important to remember that you really don't have a lot of time to catch someone's attention and build that relationship with them that they'll actually register to vote. And so it's really just about 5 seconds or less to get someone's attention, to ask them a question, pull them in, and to make sure that they register to vote. Anything you want to add?
No, I think that does it.
Okay, cool. So this brings us to the end of our first webinar on voter registration. We're going to be following this up with some more sessions on election day voting and early voting, as well as how do we actually, what do we do after the election, and we need to get people involved in the work that our organizations are doing year round. So we thank you for tuning in.
And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me or James. You're James at ohvoice.org.
That's right.
And I'm Camille, CAMILLE at ohvoice.org.
That's right. Thank you so much, and good luck in the field.